The Kings lose to the Knicks 120-109 in a game that was competitive for 3 quarters, and then the fourth quarter happened. And the Kings got out to a great start. We're up 21 early, and the Knicks grinded their way back in. Blowing a 21-point lead, like having the Knicks come all the way back, it's normal in the NBA. Like, I have no problem with that. The Knicks grinded their way back. They're a good team. They're at home. And, I think a lot of the Kings blowing it can be chalked up to the portions of the game where the Kings didn't have Malik Monk. In the first half, when Fox was off the floor, you could see the Kings just didn't really know what to do offensively. You had Sabonis kind of just walking around with the ball like, somebody please come take this and drive to the rim. But every time he handed it off, no one was driving towards the rim. And so then the Kings made the adjustment in the second half. And it's something that I thought they should do, is like, okay, if no one's going to drive to the rim when Fox is off the floor, just give it to Sabonis in the post. So you actually give him a chance to try to create something himself. And it worked pretty well in the second half. But then you had him go off the floor. And so then it's just Fox out there in the third quarter. And so the Knicks kind of come back into it at that point. Because again, you don't have Malik Monk when you normally would. And so that's all understandable. Like, it's a tie game going into the fourth quarter. If you told me that before the game, I would take that every single time. We gave ourselves a chance in the portions of the game where you can't just have your starting unit out there. Other guys stepped up, but then the fourth quarter defense just didn't even give us a chance. And I just didn't understand it. And, I've had people in my comments talk about how, like, they think I don't criticize Mike Brown enough or the coaching staff or whatever. But there really is a reason why I don't. And it's because I'm not in the huddles. I have no idea. Like, I can only see what the players are doing out on the court. And this was very much one of those instances where it's like, there's no way what we saw defensively in the fourth quarter is what the coaching staff wanted them to do, right? And if it was, then they deserve all the blame, the coaching staff. But I can't believe that they would they would have come up with that game plan, because in the first half the Kings start blitzing Jalen Brunson, and they blitz him pretty much wherever, and it was pretty effective. And you force Isaiah Hartenstein to be the creator in the middle, and they forced the Knicks to play a different style than the Knicks usually play, and that led to increased assist numbers for the Knicks. It forced other guys to beat us. And the Knicks adjusted by putting different guys as the screener, and especially Josh Hart getting into the middle of the paint, and that's why he scored, 31 points? Yeah, 31 points. But it was the fact that the Kings just played the same coverage pretty much for 48 minutes. Like, you can't do that in the NBA. You can't play the exact same coverage against a guy, one specific guy in Jalen Brunson for the entire time that he was out on the court. They're blitzing him. And in the fourth quarter, the blitzes were like especially weak, where he's just dribbling the ball up to half court, and then two guys are just slowly walking up to him, and he just makes a pass, and it's 4-on-3. And because it's all the way out at half court, you're making yourself have to recover a very long way to get back into the play. And so, for one, the Kings weren't blitzing hard enough. That was one thing. But then also just blitzing in general in the middle of the floor on every single possession. Like, the Knicks had figured it out, and they were just getting layups every time. Like, Josh Hart was making everything around the rim. And it's not like we have a shot blocker back there that we're funneling guys into. And that's especially the thing. Like, this is not Sabonis's fault that he's not back there getting stops every time. Like, the limitations of the guys that are back there, and yet you're still playing this way. Like, I think it's fine for you to blitz a little bit, but you have to change up the coverage. And they didn't. And if you are going to blitz, you have to go much harder than they were. And so, yes, the Kings' offense was also horrible in the fourth quarter, And a lot of that was because they couldn't get out in transition and run, because the Knicks were scoring on every single possession, but also the Kings just settling for bad 3-point shots. These were not good, clean, open shots. They were taking some contested early shot clock threes and just not even driving into the paint at all. And it's one of the reasons for the free throw differential in this game, but especially in that fourth quarter. And so, yes, the offense wasn't good, but it didn't even matter if the offense was good or not because the defense was just that bad. The Kings allowed 20 points in the first quarter and then 32, 35, 33. And there was never an adjustment. And I just don't understand that. The first quarter was great. Fox was hot early on. The Knicks were going under on Keon Ellis, which I just don't understand why teams continuously do that. Like, why is that the scouting report to go under on him? So he was punishing, started 3 for 3 from 3. Davion Mitchell was making everything. The defense was very good. The rotations were on point. Again, the Kings forcing the Knicks to play a way that they didn't want to play. And the Kings were dominating the glass until Mitchell Robinson came in. And that dude's an absolute beast on the offensive glass. So he was just getting his hands on everything. But they were doing a good job on the glass. And the Kings were just doing a really good job defensively, like hounding Brunson. They had 2 steals off of him early. I think Keon got one and Fox got one when he got to the middle of the floor, sending bodies at him. The only time when the Knicks were really scoring was the Kings were running the Knicks really hard off the 3-point line. And so, sometimes it was a little too much and the Knicks could get inside and score. But that was just something the Kings were going to live with because you don't want to let them just spot up from 3 and get easy shots. You want to force them to make a play inside. And they were doing a very good job of that. And I think Keegan was the only guy that really had a bad defensive first quarter. Keegan just he went 4 for 10 from 3 and 7 for 14 from the field. Like, had some good floaters in the first quarter, but I think he was really bad defensively in this game. Like, he went under on a Dante DiVincenzo screen, and Dante's just going to step out and knock that down every time. But then you look at a guy like Davion Mitchell, and he is like was kind of the opposite of Keegan defensively. Like, he was closing out hard and then staying in front of guys. It's really amazing what Davion can do defensively sometimes. And that combined with his offensive game lately has been amazing. I mean, it was just the perfect first quarter with Fox being on fire from everywhere on the court. He took 13 threes and made 6 of them. And the Kings had a 15-point lead by the end of the first quarter. I knew it wouldn't last. I knew the bench and like Keon Ellis wouldn't stay hot. Fox probably wouldn't stay as hot, although, that one, he could have stayed hot. But Davion's not going to stay that hot. But it was really the defense that was super encouraging. And even at the start of the second quarter, Bogdanovich made some really tough shots. But other than that, the Kings were getting stops. Lyles with a couple nice takes to the rim. The Kings were just pushing the pace. You had Alex Len closing out and then, keeping the guy in front of him and then knocking the ball away and forcing a turnover. Like, what is happening? It really was crazy, perfect beginning to this game. Alex Len locking guys up on the perimeter. Like, are you kidding me? But then De'Aaron Fox went out of the game. And unsurprisingly, that's when the Knicks went on a run, and that's not anything that I'm going to, criticize too heavily. Like, they got a 21-point lead, and that's a lead that we needed because, with the injuries that we have, that our bench is a lot weaker, at least, especially in terms of guys who are going to create their own offense off the dribble. Keegan, I thought, needed to be more aggressive when Fox was out. And don't even get me started on Harrison Barnes. Like, oh my God. Harrison Barnes was a +1 in this game, which I just find hilarious. And that's just an example of why plus minus is not always a great stat. Because, my God, he was awful. 15 minutes, 0 points, 0 for 2. 1 rebound, 1 steal, And this is the craziest stat, 3 turnovers. He had more turnovers than shot attempts. And so with Keegan not being aggressive in the second quarter, with Barnes being whatever Barnes was, the Kings offense was rough. And that's where I'm like, if nobody is going to do anything off the dribble, like Davion was trying, but you need the better offensive players to actually do something in Keegan and Harrison Barnes. And so I was just like, why not just post up Sabonis at this point? Because obviously Sabonis is the only guy who can do anything offensively. Like no one else is trying. And so with him trying to play the dribble handoff game out on the perimeter, that just means he can't create inside. So if no one else is going to go inside, just give it to him in the post. Like normally I'm against going to him in the post. But it couldn't have been worse than what was happening. And so I was like, we need to make that adjustment. And like I said, they did in the second half. They went to him in the post because like no one was trying to get into the paint. And it worked out much better when they went to him in the post in the second half. Then Fox came back in the game. Things stabilized a bit. Kings got out in transition. Keegan knocking down a 3. Lyles getting the offensive rebound and one. But then was that the one that he missed the free throw on? The free throw shooting was very bad. Kings were 3 for 8 in the first half, ended 7 for 12. So what is that? 4 for 4 in the second half, but 3 for 8 in the first half. And I just think when you're missing Malik Monk, you got to get your offense when, you're handed it. When Davion Mitchell is getting fouled in the backcourt and gets to go to the free throw line, you got to take advantage. And he went 0 for 2. I'm not just criticizing Davion Mitchell because he was really good in this game, but just, a team-wide thing. We still are the worst team in the league when it comes to free throws. Sabonis going 3 for 5, Trey missing 1. Foul trouble was definitely a bit of an issue. You had Keegan picking up his 3rd in the second quarter. Keon ended up fouling out really late in this game. He was just, in foul trouble the entire game. And then start of the third quarter, Keegan picks up his 4th foul and then picked up his 5th foul like midway through on just a really stupid foul. Keon picked up his 4th foul in the middle of the third. So the foul trouble was a big issue. And in that third quarter, the Knicks would throw a punch and then the Kings would, punch right back. There were a few moments where there should have been transition take fouls, but Knicks just got away with stopping our transition, which I just don't understand. Like they could just take a foul in transition. What's the rule for if you're not going to call it? It completely stopped our momentum there, so that didn't help. But one thing the Knicks did well was when they were getting pressured, they did a really good job of back cutting, and especially like Isaiah Hartenstein was really good at passing on these back cuts and passing, especially when one of the Kings defenders had their back to him, so couldn't see the ball. He did a really good job of that, and the Knicks scored in that way, whereas the Kings kind of started getting pressured and they didn't respond in the same way. They weren't back cutting. They just kept getting pushed further and further out on the perimeter. And there were some bad turnovers. Fox was throwing the ball away quite a bit. He had 4 turnovers. Sabonis had 4 as well, but 2 of them were illegal screens. So I just think that like those should be a different category. Like same with charges. Like they're a different type of turnover that I think needs to be categorized differently because in my mind they just mean a different thing. Like it can be bad. Like it's not a good thing that Sabonis is setting these screens, but also it's something that he has to do, and that's just part of the game. You're going to get called for some moving screens. Whereas you don't, need to be throwing the ball away. I just think like Sabonis at times got caught unaware with the ball from a guy from behind. Fox was just throwing passes to guys who weren't looking at him. Like Lyles trying to feed down low to Len, turning it over. Harrison Barnes just being completely awful. And so that just allowed the Knicks to get out in transition, get out and run. And, Dante DiVincenzo was hitting those transition threes, which really hurt. And the Kings, they went into the post with Sabonis and he made some things happen, both scoring and, getting assists, getting other guys open. That worked a lot better than what they tried in the first half. So that was a good adjustment. You're not necessarily going to be as successful in those moments as you are when Fox and Sabonis are both out there together, obviously. But you just got to be able to, keep the ship afloat a little bit in those moments. Got to find some ways to score, and then you got to rely on your defense on the other end, which they just didn't do very well. Sasha came in, gave some nice minutes. I think he airballed 2 threes in the first half, which, not great. But then he came in and got that layup off an inbound, should have been an and one, and got a 3 to go. So he was providing offense in the third quarter that we needed, because Lyles was good, like attacking the rim, but his 3-point shot wasn't really falling. So that's why it's nice to also have Sasha in there to knock down some threes. And the Knicks got within 3. Kings punched back to get it back to 8. And then Sabonis went out. And that's when the Kings just completely stopped getting into the paint. From that moment where Sabonis goes out in the third quarter, the Kings just did not touch the paint at all for the rest of the game. Even when he came back in and Fox was in, like, the Kings just didn't go to the paint at all. And so Fox was out there without Sabonis. Brunson wasn't on the court, and the Knicks went on a run. 11-0 run to end the quarter. Fox got a 3 at the end of the quarter to stop the bleeding a little bit and tie the game up, and that was huge. But, like, getting outscored 11-0 when Brunson isn't even on the court and Fox is, that was killer. The start of the fourth quarter was interesting because you had Bogdanovic making some tough shots to start the quarter, but then you had Trey Lyles just exploiting him right back on the other end and just driving right by him. And one of the times Lyles just turned it over, so that wasn't great. But the Kings were doing a good job of using Alex Len inside as kind of a focal point. Either he's getting a dunk or he's passing it back out to the perimeter. But then the Knicks just went on a massive, massive run. I think the Kings went up 3. And then the Knicks just completely took control of this game. And the Kings went completely cold from 3, but it wasn't one of those moments where you're just missing open shots. Oh, well, it happens. It was like, why are we taking these early shot clock contested threes? I didn't understand it. No one trying to get to the rim. The ball was just like not moving the same as it did earlier in the game. And then I already talked about the defense, just like slowly blitzing Jalen Brunson, allowing the Knicks to set up in whatever they wanted and easily score inside on every single possession. You also had that weird Sabonis jump ball call where the Knicks, I don't even think Hartenstein touched the ball, and yet he got a jump ball. So that was interesting. And then you had that illegal screen, and that was all part of the, that big momentum for the Knicks where the Kings just couldn't find that flow offensively. But again, I'm just not sure that would have even mattered, because it's not like the Knicks were just picking the Kings apart in transition. I mean, I think earlier in the game, they definitely exploited transition opportunities, but in the fourth quarter, it didn't matter whether they were in transition or not. They were picking us apart in the half court. There was a moment where, the Kings, Keon is on Brunson and Lyles is on whoever was screening. And Keon he gets over, or maybe he goes under, Lyles is out on Brunson. They can easily either switch back or blitz hard, whatever they want to do, whatever the game plan is. But instead, Keon just kind of sits in no man's land and then backs off. And then Lyles is stuck on an island against Brunson for no reason whatsoever. And Brunson just nails the 3. I just have no idea what the Kings were doing defensively. Also, Harrison Barnes came back in with was it 5 minutes to go in the fourth quarter? Why? I mean, why? While the offense was bad, that's not the biggest problem, and Harrison Barnes is not going to fix your defense at all. You took him out of the game, and I didn't think he should come back into the game after he got taken out in the third quarter. And the coaching staff obviously thought the same, but then they just like panicked with 5 minutes to go. Like, I mean, I don't think it changed anything, but just why? And they brought Chris Duarte in the second half. Again, why? I don't, for defense. It wasn't about the individual players that we have on the court. It was about whatever game plan we had. I don't think Sabonis had the best game, but he definitely didn't have the worst game. Like, he was still a positive influence out there. He had some moments of not being strong with the ball, but then past that, I mean, to be effective in the dribble handoff game, you need to be handing off to someone who is actually either really a threat to shoot a movement three like Kevin Huerter, or a threat to get downhill like Malik Monk, or even Kevin Huerter can get, off the dribble and create something going downhill. And we didn't have that. And so then you're just kind of utilizing Sabonis in a way that no one on the team is going to take advantage of. And that's where I think Keegan needs to be better. He needs to be able to grow and become a player who can operate with the ball in his hands in those situations and become a playmaker. And obviously that's a lot to put on a second year player, but it's just the reality of the situation. I'm not going to, blame him, because I mean, that's just a tough situation, but it's the reality of the situation, I guess. And I just think it shows what we need him to become in the future for this team to be very successful, and for this team to be able to sustain losses to key guys like we've seen. Because as we saw, Fox cannot be the only scorer. Especially, I mean, I guess he can. I guess he kind of proved he can. Like, 29 points, he was really good. It was on 26 shots, which isn't great, but I mean, the Kings were in it. And it really was just the defense that let them down in the fourth quarter. But yeah, we needed someone else, especially at times in the second quarter and in the fourth quarter, to be able to create something. And obviously that's something that we expect Harrison Barnes to be able to do. But I'm not even mentioning him because that's how much of a non-factor he was. Like, he wasn't even an option because he wasn't in the game because he was that bad. When you have Malik Monk and Kevin Huerter out, you cannot have Harrison Barnes be a complete negative. I was looking at the Real Sports app, right? And they have like that rating system. I don't know how it works, but it like lists the players, with the best rating at the top. So I'm looking at the Kings and I'm trying to look at like Harrison Barnes' stats. And I'm like, where is he? I don't see him. I had to scroll all the way down below the inactive players because he had a negative score. I didn't even know that was possible on that app. He had a negative score below the inactive players. I mean, he's got to give us something. It's hard to understand just him. Like, some games he's so good, he's, wiggling his way into the paint, slow stepping, getting the and one, making tough shots off one leg inside, knocking down threes. And then in some games, he's like catching the ball and falling over with zero contact, and then the other team just comes up and grabs the ball. Like, there was that point where he was like posted up and he just like fell over catching the ball. Oh, that was, if I didn't get so mad at the turnover at the time, I definitely would have laughed. I'm laughing now, but man, I think the positives we can take away from this game are: one, the Kings figured out that sometimes we just need to go to Sabonis in the post when things aren't working out. I don't want that to be the number one option for sure, but sometimes, they figured out, because it is a process figuring out how to play when you're without certain guys that you relied so much upon. And so I think you could see the Kings kind of learning throughout this game in that department. Also, positives, nice to have Lyles back. He was big. Always good for some good rebounds and some good takes to the hoop. Sasha hit 2 threes in garbage time, in like the 1 minute of garbage time, so padding his stats. But I think he was solid and is definitely going to contribute towards the end of the season. Davion continuing to be very good. Keon continuing to be pretty good. Fox showing up because it's a TNT game, so he can actually make some threes, although I wanted him to attack more in the fourth quarter. But to his credit, he did attack at some points, and he was really just the only one attacking. I think the negatives, Keegan's defense was not good at all, and he was fouling a lot. The defensive game plan, obviously Harrison Barnes, and just the offense overall without Malik Monk. This was a tough loss to take because Phoenix won yesterday, I think it was. Dallas won today, and we go tomorrow into Boston. So that's going to be tough. There is something, though, about this stretch, coming down the stretch of the season with the injuries that we have, that I feel like has taken a bit of the pressure and expectations to actually get into a top 6 spot, and it's more of just a bonus if we do. Like, we're locked in. I think the Rockets lost tonight, so I think that actually guarantees us a play-in spot. Not that anyone was worried about that, but it's just official mathematically now. And so I think at this point, if you make top 6, that's like exceeding all expectations. If you're 7-8, that's like, yep, that's what we thought. And if you fall into the 9-10 spot, probably just 9 spot, then that's a big disappointment. But either way, this team is going to have a chance to prove itself by either playing great down the stretch here, maybe getting this win in Boston tomorrow in what's going to be a very tough game, or by winning winner takes all, either one or two, winner take all games in the play-in. Also, I didn't mention Sabonis's double streak alive, barely, but it is alive. It took him a while to get there, but it is alive. But going into Boston, I think Jalen Brown's questionable, Derek White's questionable, and that's pretty much it for the important guys there. But they could be a little short-handed. I have no idea what to expect coming into this game, because I think it's two teams, a team in Boston that at times can just fall asleep and forget how good they are, a team that's locked up the number 1 overall seed. Like, they could come in and just not care, and that would make sense. But then at the same time, I could see them coming in, just knocking down every 3 and running us out of the building. And then on the Kings side, we've seen them plenty of times respond to a loss like we just took against the Knicks and respond against a very good team with a big win. So I could definitely see that happening, but it's just going to require a much better defensive performance than what we saw against the Knicks. I said coming into these 2 games, you want to find a way to get one of them, and it wasn't the easier one, I would say. We lost that one, but still a chance to get one of them. And then you got to beat Brooklyn. And then you got to you don't necessarily have to beat Oklahoma City, I guess, but then you got to beat the Pelicans, the Suns, and the Trailblazers to end out the season if you want a chance at the top 6. I mean, it is nice that we played to the teams that we're in the race for. So, and we could get the tiebreaker on Phoenix, win a game against New Orleans, who's been sliding. So it's nice that we play those teams. So we have those 2 games, plus 2 games against not great teams in Brooklyn and Portland, plus hopefully a game against Boston where they just don't care because they locked up the number 1 overall seed. Like, that's the very optimistic way of looking at this schedule. So anyways, that is it for this episode of the Roll Report. I will be back tomorrow to recap that game against the Celtics. Peace.